The Xbox 360 will go down as one of the best consoles of all time, and even though it had a wacky and zany release, the console itself still has a big community behind it, and it left a lot of games that people still play today. The current landscape of gaming and how we play across the world online was thanks to this console. And while I don't really like console wars, there is no doubt that the Xbox 360 influenced what we have today with PSN or with Xbox Game Pass that is clearly not doing very well. The console itself revolutionized internet, as in like fiber optics, because if anybody remembers at that time, internet was god awful, and playing online in that time period was really difficult because we just didn't have the internet speeds. And it was thanks to this console that revolutionized what we have today with Wi-Fi speeds and internet connectivity. It also gave way to platforms like Discord because of its online chat features, and it was definitely revolutionary of the time. What do I mean by revolutionary? There were a lot of messages that were controversial of the time. A lot of slurs were thrown around. The 360 also revolutionized crazy dashboard appearances and making buying digital the norm, as in like you could literally buy demos. There was the marketplace. There was this thing called Xbox Live Arcade where you could buy these wacky and zany creations, some controversial, as in you could download a game from Xbox Live Arcade that was known to have a mechanic that would basically launch a baby from birth. But I do still play one of those arcade games, that game being Kingdom for Keflings, which was created around the time that Xbox avatars were introduced and the popularity of RuneScape was everywhere. It was essentially just a knockoff, but it was a fun knockoff. It also gave way to what we see now with like Netflix, buying movies digitally. The 360 was actually the media console that nobody really talks about because it still had so much gaming behind it that people didn't focus on the media aspect. So what made the 360 one of the best consoles of all time? Well, we need to go back in time to what I experienced. In the Christmas of 2005, my parents decided to buy me my first Xbox 360 console. If you remember, at this time, there were like 3 iterations of the Xbox 360 console. The arcade was one of the cheapest because it didn't have a hard drive, but at that time, consoles also had memory cards still. But the majority of people would kind of opt into the Xbox 360 Elite, which was the more black version of this that had a bigger hard drive. Let me just tell you that I went through like 7 consoles of the time, and I'll get more into that later in this video because it is due to the Red Ring of Death. My first online experience was Halo 3 and the custom game functionality of that game. Also Forge. I didn't really play much matchmaking into Halo 3. It was more custom games because people were just creating some of the most unique things. And you cannot say that the success of Halo 3 and the success of Gears of War did not factor into how successful the Xbox 360 was. The marketing behind Halo 3 was insane. It was everywhere. It was printed on everything. And Gears of War was kind of like Microsoft's fantasy world of creatures and the future. A few other games that I played online of the time were Test Drive Unlimited, Test Drive Unlimited 2, Saints Row, and Saints Row 2, Transformers Revenge of the Fallen. And I've since recollected all of these games because whenever I became an adult, I kind of sold off the Xbox 360 and a lot of the games that I had collected. Test Drive Unlimited and Test Drive Unlimited 2 were one of the best racing games of all time, and they still remain that way. A lot of people remember these games as the Forza Horizon of its time period, and that's definitely true because Forza Horizon has taken a lot of styling cues from what Test Drive Unlimited was. But Test Drive Unlimited wasn't like a unique title catered to the Xbox 360. It was on other platforms like the PS2, the PS3, but it was one of my first experiences of being online and playing until like 3 or 4 in the morning, and also having my dad yell at me because I was constantly on this game. Everybody knows how controversial Saints Row has been. It has always said itself to be the more adult version of Grand Theft Auto. Whenever Saints Row released and I had my hands on it at a very young age, I was glued to the game. It will forever be like one of those games that I constantly play over and over and over, and the story does not get boring to me because it brings back a lot of memory of the online experience. A few other titles that I was constantly on, Halo Reach was another one where I was constantly playing matchmaking. I loved Slayer of the time. It really set forth what we see today in gaming, whether it be like Call of Duty or the MCC. It was like ahead of its time. But realistically, we kind of need to get into what made the Xbox 360 so special. Personalization for the console was one of the most unique things of that generation. The PS3 of the time didn't really have a way where you could break down the console, do all these crazy things with it. The Wii, being the most successful out of all of this, was still kind of bland, and so the customization of the Xbox 360 was what made it one of the best consoles of all time. So what do I mean by that? I mean that the original Xbox 360 had this faceplate that you could interchange. It was everywhere that you could buy one of these faceplates for about $20 to $30 of the time. Now, it didn't really make sense because the console was a different color, but if you really wanted to show off to your friends like, hey, I got this crazy new thing with my Xbox 360 console, you could easily buy a cheap faceplate and swap them out. Another thing that made the Xbox 360 so unique was that you could like literally wrap the console in like these crazy, there was like either Gears of War or Halo 3, and I actually had the Halo 3 wrap for so long, and I bragged about it to a lot of my friends until the Xbox itself got the red ring of death, and then I ended up upgrading to the Xbox 360 Elite, and then I upgraded to the Xbox 360 Slim. But it wasn't just console appearance. There were things like the Xbox 360 wireless headset, there was that keyboard on the controller that I had, there was also this zany wacky controller that had a dragon design of the time that my parents ended up getting me because I kept breaking controllers as well. I would get mad over Halo 3 custom games to the point where I would throw the controller and break it. Yes, I was one of those kids. But this leads me into the modding scene of the Xbox 360. At that time, there were crazy modding scenes behind the console, even on its release, and it's been pushed even further now that it's been 20 years. You could go on forums back in the day and see how people were modding these consoles, what LED lighting that they were doing, what type of fans that they were throwing on this thing. And that led into softwares like Modio that you could download on your PC and transfer modded files into your Xbox 360 via USB. You could literally take a thumb drive and download some of your games to the thumb drive, or download modded files and transfer them over to the saved game files that you had on the 360. Some of this is still prevalent in like my Test Drive Unlimited 2 career. I basically use older versions of Modio in this present time to get like unlimited money, where I have like $2 trillion. One of the most wild things that came out of this console is it jump-started a lot of YouTube careers. A lot of people uploaded Halo 3 content that was funny of the time on YouTube. A lot of people uploaded Gears of War content on YouTube that was funny or interesting. A lot of people uploaded playthroughs of the time that were helpful to get you past a certain level. So this console revolutionized what we see on Let's Play communities today. And it was kind of thanks to like Microsoft and their innovative techniques that they had of the time that are lost now because of profit-seeking measures. This console literally made people famous. Whenever the Xbox original released, Microsoft was looking at ways to make consoles more of a PC experience. The 360 was no exception to that. They had things like Windows Live Messenger, the Windows Media Center, where you could connect your Windows XP PC to the Xbox 360 and kind of like host videos or drag photos into a file, and it would kind of carry over. It was kind of a media center of the 2000s that people just don't really remember. But there was also this crazy accessory that came with it, like the Live Vision camera, where it was basically a webcam that would allow you to use it as like a webcam service, or allow you to use the Xbox 360 as what we see today with like Zoom. Now, before I jump into the most controversial part, it cannot go unnoticed that the Blade's dashboard is one of the most beloved dashboards of all time. If you kind of take a gander into this dashboard, it has a lot of unique features. A lot of people are modding their consoles to go back into the Blades dashboard to experience what the mid 2000s was. And while I do think that this is one of the best dashboards of all time, there's no way that the Xbox of today's time period can compete to what that was. If you take a look at the Blades dashboard, it is kind of in the shape of the OG Xbox 360, and whenever you kind of like cycle through the pages, it's one of those experiences that like the PlayStation 2 and the original Xbox didn't really have that the 360 brought forward. But I can't go into this without talking about the other dashboards that came with it. There was a dashboard that was released in 2008 that introduced the avatars that you still kind of see around whenever you sign into your Xbox 360 Live account to this day. I still have mine. There was one that released in 2010 that backed the concept of the Kinect. And speaking of the Kinect, it cannot go unnoticed that the Kinect was pretty successful with its release in 2010, but then fell after like 2012, mainly because of the lack of gaming behind it, and it was more or less just seen as a gimmick. And so a lot of people didn't design games around it. With the introduction of Forza Horizon in 2010, it did advertise that it was better with Kinect, but even if you use Kinect on the game, it just wasn't that good of an experience. However, the Kinect did bring forth scientific study, and it was used in like Paranormal Activity 4 as this gimmick where you could see the demon. I do think that the Kinect was way ahead of its time. It was just not very optimized for a lot of the games that came out. A lot of developers just kind of let it fall on its feet. And the Kinect was also seen as trying to steal sales from the success of the Wii console, because we had outsold a lot of the PlayStations and Xbox 360s of the time, mainly because of its unique sensor controller that the Wii offered. Kinect wasn't something new, like PlayStation did this with the PS2 in the early 2000s. It did give people hope that the future of gaming was going to be different. You could say that the Kinect was like the precursor to VR headsets, mainly because there's a lot of gimmicky games with VR headsets that kind of like show off that, oh, it's a VR headset. The Kinect did the exact same thing, especially with like Kinect Sports. That was very gimmicky. Now we're going to get into some of the most controversial things of the Xbox 360. It cannot go unnoticed that the first generation of the Xbox 360 was plagued with Red Ring of Death, and this would go on to push Microsoft to extend its warranties because so many people were having issues with this console. In the very beginning, a lot of people do not remember this. The console did not really have a timer for it to be set for like 6 hours, 1 hour if you weren't playing a game. This led to a lot of deaths of the Xbox 360. The Red Ring of Death was so problematic that you had people in 06 and 07 uploading videos on YouTube on how to get rid of the Red Ring of Death. And this could either be from like wrapping a towel around the console and making it overheat itself, or you could literally just put the motherboard in the oven and heat it up and let the board warp itself. But the console design in itself was problematic. Microsoft was testing out a lot with the Xbox 360, and cooling the console was the most problematic of its time. There were a lot of times where we had to go back to Best Buy or Circuit City and swap them out with the warranties that we had purchased because these consoles were known to not be reliable. This type of problem also gave way to advertising for the console itself because the Red Ring of Death was so controversial that it left people making videos on YouTube. It left multiple articles. Another controversial thing that happened to the 360 is it started to become a media center before the Xbox One. A lot of people don't remember this, but there was a time where you could watch Netflix in like a theater setting with your friends. Your avatars would kind of run into the theater and you could sit and watch movies of the time. This was the introduction of what Microsoft had planned for the Xbox One. A lot of my childhood ended up on this console, and I still have the Xbox 360e, which I still play heavily to this day. I'm always playing Tony Hawk Proving Ground. You'll see me live streaming GTA 4. Sometimes I'll live stream Test Drive Unlimited 2. It was these games and the online experience that left this console one of the best consoles of all time for me. And you cannot forget to mention just the community behind this console, the modding scene, how people are still playing online to this day on this console. Microsoft kind of made this console forever remembered because of how important it was to its success. People were developing games for the community. It wasn't for profit seeking. The 360 got me away from a life that I was not happy being. And I really wish gaming of this time period it offered that same experience. I think a lot of people are upset with the profit-seeking narratives that a lot of companies are doing now. With that being said, this will be the end of my video. There's a lot that I missed on the Xbox 360 console that a lot of other good content creators have made throughout the years. I kind of just wanted to share my experience with this console and what it meant to me. The Xbox 360 will forever go down as like the love of my life, as stupid as that sounds.